Hey everyone, it's Brandon Love from the Canadian Mortgage Guide. Today I'm going to show you a wealth building strategy that you can use by coupling your first home savings account and a holding company. And this is a bit of an advanced strategy, but it's not rocket science to do. And it's something you can do as a first time homebuyer, and one I'd recommend doing if you plan on adding a lot of properties to your portfolio. So stick around to the end. By the end, you'll know if this strategy is right for you and the next steps to take to make it happen. Okay, so this is a wealth building strategy designed for people who plan to make money in real estate. So before we dive into things, let's just go over the tools that we'll be using. First off, you have your first home savings account. This is a hybrid account that's kind of like an RRSP in that it reduces the total amount of taxes paid, and it's like a TFSA in that the growth within that account is tax free, and you can access those funds tax free to be put towards the purchase of your first owner occupied home. So, a few things to note: you can contribute 8,000 per year for up to 5 years. If you don't use the money, it doesn't go to waste and it doesn't hurt anything else. You can contribute it to your RSP without hurting your overall contribution limit. So the key piece here is tax-free growth and lowering your overall income. That's why it's such a beautiful tool. Tool number 2 is a holding company. This is a corporation that's set up in Ontario, and it's a place to park your assets. So there's no active borrowing or lines of credit or anything within that. It's simply a place to hold the asset. So in this case, we would be holding real estate through the holding company. The benefit to this is that while you qualify with your personal qualifications, the holding company doesn't get added to future applications and doesn't hurt your overall borrowing power down the line. So let's take a look at a typical journey and see how this would play out. So, usual journey for someone who's buying their first home is they save up their down payment. They might utilize a first home savings account or RRSP and contribute funds to those accounts while they save up for that down payment. They may also get sources like gifted funds and other areas that can also count towards this. When they buy their first property, they utilize their pass to use that first home savings account. So once it's used, it's done. They also use their RSP access, which is also done, and they get the first property. If they're lucky and they continue to save and invest in other asset classes, they can save up additional funds to put towards an investment property, which can be used as a rental. The problem I see with this strategy is that if your goal is only to buy one home and kind of move up the property ladder that way, it works out nicely. But if your goal is to build a portfolio of properties, that first property you've bought that's owner occupied, it now hurts your borrowing ratios for future properties. So you have to debt service the property you're holding. It limits your total borrowing power and either blocks you from being able to buy an additional property or restricts the total amount you can afford. But what if there was a better way? The strategy I'm going to show you is one that I personally have used. I used it to buy the two properties you can see here. And obviously, I have a thing for small white houses, apparently, which I didn't realize in doing this. But the first property on the left was the rental property I got located in Sarnia, Ontario. And the property on the right is my current primary residence, and that's in Southampton, Ontario. So, how this works is you reverse the order. Instead of buying the owner occupied property first, you buy your rental property first. And instead of putting that rental property in your personal name and using up your land transfer tax credit, you put it in a holding company. Why would you do this? Well, I just alluded to one part there about maintaining that land transfer tax credit for future properties. But additionally, there's several other key benefits. First, it preserves the usage of the first home savings account. So you can now contribute that $8,000 per year and get that up to the maximum amount of $40,000. The benefit of this being you have $8,000 in income tax reduction each year, and the funds that get added to that account can also grow and appreciate with their investment. So hopefully you can grow that 40,000 to 50,000 and then access that to buy your next property. Additionally, this option allows you to use secondary markets. In my case, that was like Sarnia, where I could buy a property that was cheaper than the area I live in, and it allowed me to start building some rental income that way. The last benefit here is that that property in your holding company doesn't impact future qualification, so it doesn't hurt your borrowing power. So while you're building that larger nest egg and capitalizing on these tax savings, you can save up to buy a property in your primary market. Nothing comes without a cost, and obviously there's a few additional costs to doing this strategy. So let's just review this in detail. In this case, I'm going to show you a breakdown of how it worked for my Sarnia property. So purchase price was 280,000. I live mainly in the GTA. Property prices here, 750 plus. So getting a property for 280,000 was a dream. Down payment there of 20% was $56,000. The legal fees, including the holding company setup, this came to 4,217. Knowing what I know now, I could do this a lot cheaper, but I didn't have that insight in the first time around. So I could save you some money on the cost that I bore in doing this strategy to make it a little bit cheaper for you. And then the land transfer tax on this property was 2,675. So total amount there came in at $62,892. Now, there's operating costs to running any property. So I'll show you a monthly breakdown and why I really like this. So monthly, I get rent of 1975. So that's plus 1975 there. My mortgage payment is $1,308.04. Property tax is $90.75. Insurance is $114.67. Then I have a certain percentage allocated to vacancy and a certain budget sent to repairs, which works out to be about $102 per month. Utilities are paid by the tenant, so ultimately I cash flow $359.54 each month from this property. Not a huge gain, but they're also paying my mortgage in that equation. So I'm getting the principal pay down of the loan itself, and then I'm cash flowing as well. What does this look like? Startup costs 62,892. That is an annual cash flow of 4,314 and 48 cents. So it's a 6.89% return on my investment annually. Plus, this isn't factoring in any appreciation of the property, which I bought when property prices came way down there. And it's also not factoring in the principal paydown that I mentioned of the mortgage itself. So for my cottage property in Southampton, I was able to use the maximum withdrawal for my RSP plus 2 years of the first home savings account. So this reduced my total tax burden by 35,000 for the RRSP and 16,000 for the first home savings account. So $51,000. I also had growth in investments in both of those categories. So I was able to pick up a win there as well. Now, in my case, I saw the opportunity to buy a cottage property, and we shared a video about cottage properties and why we think there's an opportunity there. So I decided to kind of pull the plug on the strategy at year 2 of the first home savings account. In theory, you could ride this out until year 5 and continue to add properties in your holding company should you wish to. And I still can use that holding company vehicle for future investments, but I decided to capitalize on the cottage market, and that's why I pulled out at year 2. So the best part about this strategy, when I go to buy my next property, my cottage property can be used as a rental property for qualification as well, and that can help my ratios so that I can buy something else closer to my primary market. Ultimately, this strategy has some nuance to it. It has some risk. So you want to determine if it's right for you. Okay. Not everything we share is going to be the best fit for everyone. Some of you may say, I just want to get my first owner occupied home and I want to pay my mortgage as quickly as possible. That's great. We have a strategy for you as well. This one is designed for someone who wants to build a portfolio of properties. So I've outlined an avatar of what someone would look like who would be a fit for this strategy. Ideal fit, you plan to build that portfolio of properties. You're comfortable with being a landlord and what's involved with that. So obviously there's a little bit of risk of tenants not paying rent, different things like that that come into play. And you're willing to be patient and maximize this tax and investment strategy. If you want to determine if this is right for you and go over this strategy in greater detail, I've shared a link to my direct calendar there, meetwithbrandon.ca, and we can chat in further detail about your scenario and map out a plan for you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe. Your support really encourages us to share more videos about how you can build wealth and master the Canadian mortgage landscape. Have an awesome day. Cheers.